Hey everyone, I'm Coach Chippys and I've been a professional top laner or head coach for the past 8 years. During this time I've reached Worlds and MSI multiple times. Now I'm a full-time coach with a ton of passion towards helping players unlock their potential and climb to their dream rank. How's it going everyone? Today we're going to be covering exactly how BLG Bin, in my opinion the best top laner in the world, is just dominating his lane phase in essentially every game he's played so far at Worlds. This player is just so incredible to watch and we're going to be diving in detail about what he does differently than the other top laners. So if you're interested in learning from the best, then this is the video for you. Now, the first matchup we're going to be reviewing is Jax versus Gragas, and in my opinion, this has been Bin's most experienced matchup he's best at, because he's played it so many times throughout this entire year. He's not afraid to blue side 1p Jax, he doesn't care, because he knows he's going to win this matchup. Now, a big mistake a lot of bad Jaxes make is they lead with E. They walk towards the Gragas with E or even EQ, and the Gragas just body slams and cancels it, right? You're going to be taking damage for free, and then the next step, where even minor pros make this mistake, lower tier pros, he leads with E, after Gragas uses E, which might sound good, right? Gragas' E is on cooldown, I'm going to trade with my E. However, the problem is, in this situation, if he did it right now, his E would hit all of the caster minions, which means he would push the wave way too quickly. Of course, Jax E does a ton of damage, especially after being hit by minions, which means he would two-wave crash. Now, the huge problem with two-wave crashing, especially against a good player like Zeus, is he's just going to freeze the wave outside of his tower. He's not afraid to block 7 or 8 minions and just drink away at his W, heal back the HP, because that means he's going to have the wave in a really good spot, where wave 3 and wave 4 is going to bunch up under the tower, which is going to be very hard for Bin to clear, to even farm the minions or even trade at all, and Zeus is just going to be forcing Bin to base and ruin his main game plan in this lane. Now, his main game plan is to get to 1100 gold before he bases, because if Jax can get Merc Treads in this matchup, and matchups like Kennen as well, if you can get Merc Treads on your first recall, it's going to be very easy to win. Because the way Gragas' E works, of course, it's a knockback and a minor stun, a mini stun. However, if you have Merc Treads, the stun doesn't last long enough before you can jump onto their head with your E. So if you walk towards him with E, you get Gragas' E. If he E's too quickly, it's going to be very easy for you to retrade onto him. So Bin knowing this, he just plays purely to get 1100 gold. Now, he doesn't get it every single time. There are some Gragases where they play it slightly better, and they make him recall and buy a null magic mantle. But in that situation, he has crashed a big wave to base and get his null magic, and then he comes back to lane with still having his TP, and then he can use his TP to get his Merc Treads when he has it. However, in this game, he doesn't have to do that because Zeus makes some mistakes, right? Where right now, the reason Bin is not trying to crash a big wave under the tower is because then it's going to bounce back. And the problem with it bouncing back is then Zeus is going to be leveling up before him. Where if Zeus is leveling up before Bin, of course, it's going to be really easy for him to trade onto him. He's going to have more minions, more levels. He's going to be a lot stronger. But Bin is pushing in a way that allows him to level up before him, but he's also not pushing too fast, right? He's keeping the wave around the middle, as you can see most of the lane, because he doesn't want to be ganked as well. So that's two positives, where he's just farming it out in the middle while slowly pushing, slightly maintaining a minion advantage so that he can farm for free in a pretty safe spot, but without the weakness of, if you're trying to freeze outside your tower, of the enemy top laner getting more XP than you, quicker. So now he's just trying to farm that out, that 1100 gold, and he's getting pretty close. On this next wave he's going to have it, but he does something pretty interesting. Where now, of course, look how good this is for him, where if he pushed too fast by using his E at a bad time, then this cannon could be closer to the tower, he wouldn't be able to hit these caster minions, but the wave is in such a good spot, because none of these minions are underneath the Gragas' tower. He can hit every single one of them, so his lane is just in such a good spot, where now he's got his 1100 gold, and the reason he doesn't recall now is, of course, Zeus is trying to freeze it, right? Where this is a Gragas, especially early on when he's got low mana, low HP, he doesn't want to be giving up XP for no reason. Now, the reason why is, of course, don't give XP if you don't have to, but he really abuses XP in this game. So, coming up, something you should know is that on this season, during the preseason, they made it so top lane gets bonus XP if you're alone, right? So if you're not a coward, if you don't need to call your jungler, you're going to get bonus experience from being isolated in your lane. Now, the reason that's important is because now they've made it so if you get every single piece of XP before the 530 cannon, so every single one of these minions, you're going to get level 6 on the very last minion. Where every other season, you needed a minion from this wave as well, the cannon wave, to get level 6, you needed a couple minions, but now you can get it off of the 5-minute normal wave. And the reason that's important, and a lot of the top laners know that, the best tops in the world, is because he knows, now as soon as he hits level 6 on this last minion, he knows that he just needs all 4 pieces of XP to get level 6 himself. So he uses that opportunity as a dive window. Now, the way he plays this dive is beautiful as well, where, the level 1 Jax would just QE onto his Gragas, get interrupted by E and die, and the level 2 Jax, the good Jax players, would flash under the tower with E, because the flash is more instant, harder to react, get the stun, RW, and get the kill that way, and then Q away. Now, then, the level 3, the Grandmaster Jax, he plays it in a way, he knows that Zeus is going to die, right? If he flash E's and kills him. But he knows Zeus is a good player, he knows that as well. So he just baits out Zeus's E like this, steps back, and then it leads to a really nice solo kill. Now, that was played beautifully, but for me, the mechanics and the mind game's not the most impressive part. For me, it's the fact that he knew, alright, I've gotten every single piece of XP in my lane so far. I know on this very last XP, I'm going to be level 6, and I'm going to use that brief timer during the time where I'm level 6, and he needs 3 more minions to punish him on this window and look for a dive opportunity. So now, heading back to lane, Ben has Merc Treads versus Lost Chapter, where even though those items are the same price, the Merc Tread side for Jax is so much more valuable in terms of how you're going to be playing out your trades. Where he does have the extra longsword, of course, but in my opinion, I've watched him play this matchup every single time, and the longsword is not the factor, right? It's not the difference between winning or losing this matchup. The way he plays out his lane is, where he crashed a big wave before basing, which you should be doing every single time because Jax does get early push in this matchup, and now it's coming back towards him. So he's looking to trade on this timer now that he has Merc Tread's wave coming back, and if you notice, he walks past the minions. Of course, he's trying to be hitting Gragas, right? Walk past Gragas, get extra autos on, but something you'll notice as soon as this trade is done, he sees that only one minion is chasing him, right? The other 3 are hitting his minions, so he sees that as an opportunity, where only one minion is being annoying and chasing him, so it's very easy for him to trade onto this Gragas because the minions are not chasing him down, and he's not ruining his wave state even though he's damaging Gragas at the same time. And now he's thinning out the wave, because if the wave gets too big, he can't hold his freeze. It's going to be very easy for Gragas to Q ulti, clear the wave. So he's thinning it out as much as he can without breaking his freeze. And he's going to be trading as soon as the minions settle. You notice he doesn't trade any time before that, because he doesn't want any minions to be turning onto him for no reason. Now that he's baited out Zeus's ulti, it's a prime time to engage onto him and look to, punish and beat him down. Now, with the Merc Trades, it's so easy to get trades like this, really favorable trades, because you're going to be blocking a lot of the damage, the CC. But the main reason he won this matchup, in my opinion, is the way he played out the game plan in terms of getting 1100 gold before basing, and also his minion control throughout this entire lane. The next matchup we're going to watch is Rumble versus Aatrox, where in this game Ben showcases a really good understanding of knowing his champion's identity. He does it in most of his games, but in this one in particular, because in this game he's playing Rumble versus Aatrox, where of course Rumble, very strong blind pick, wins most of his matchups, especially with Ignite. However, versus Aatrox, if he doesn't gain any sort of meaningful advantage before level 7, level 9, Aatrox can actually start to win this lane. So Ben knowing that, he sets up a play ahead of time, where he's trading onto Aatrox the whole time, and if you'll notice, he's barely cooking his minions. His Q barely hit the casters, they're all relatively high HP, because even though he wants to trade onto the Aatrox, he doesn't want to trade in a way that'll ruin the integrity of his wave yet again, because if he 2-wave crashes, Aatrox can freeze, and then wave 3 and 4 is going to bunch up under the tower, exactly like the Jax game. It's going to be very easy for Doran to farm and trade onto Bin without taking much damage in return if Bin 2-wave crashes. So here he pushes in his way so that he can ward, because of course Rumble, very vulnerable champion, a lot more vulnerable than Jax, who needs to play around that, and now his wave is in a great spot, where if you'll notice, none of the enemy custom minions are under the tower. He can auto-attack, he can do whatever he wants, and clear this wave without any threat of taking a tower shot or being near the enemy tower. Where even now he can just stand inside the custom minions, poke Doran if he walks up, and punish him for trying to CS. Where if he pushed this wave slightly faster, it would have been under tower, and it would have been very hard for him to farm those minions, right, without taking damage in return. So the way he plays the wave just separates him from the rest, where he's just so good, and even though he's taking a bit of an even trade here, it's fine, right, because he's way stronger early game, they win 2v2, and he wants to be taking any sort of trade, obviously not a horrible trade, not a bad trade, right, but any type of even trade or favorable trade is good. But now he's just trying to damage the Aatrox, and he's just not trying to push too quickly. Because when you go for a dive, you ideally want to be bunching up 2 waves or 3 waves together. So he doesn't want to crash this wave and then just dive with a single 6 minion wave. Where now, after this blue buff, Jarvan is going to look to come up, just like they planned before the game, because they know how strong this champion is. And Maokai should have probably been here to protect him, where I'm pretty sure he's going to base and run straight here after this bot play. Where now, it's very easy for them to punish this guy, right? If you even see, I'll speed up a little bit, where Doran is scared of being dove 1v1 as well, where Ben is just threatening it, because his champion is just so strong, he took good trades this whole time, he's high HP, it's just very easy for them to threaten this, right? And now Peanut did exactly as I said before, he based and ran straight here to protect, but it's too late, right? If you want to keep your top laner alive, you have to be here at the start. And because he wasn't, they were able to not just gain a huge advantage for top, but also waste the enemy jungler's time as well. Now in our next matchup, Rumble versus Gnar, Ben showcases the exact same thing, which is why in my opinion I'd classify this as understanding your champion's identity, because on his 2 Rumble games he's played so far, he's done the exact same thing, and the matchups are similar. We're up against Gnar, of course Rumble's going to win early, but if Gnar can get to level 7, level 9 with Merc Treads, he can actually start to get some trades down, and especially later on when Gnar has Triforce, this matchup's actually very hard for Rumble later on in the side lane, so he really needs to be getting an advantage before that point. Where here, he is hard trading with the Gnar, they're trading HP back and forth, he'll trade a bit harder coming up. But the reason he's hard trading is of course to get him low, but the main point of trading is to burn Gnar's Mega, because if you play against Gnar in competitive and you want to dive him on the first cannon, you really want to be getting Gnar behind, by the way, before he gets tier 2 boots. If you can get Tabbies or Merc Treads in AP matchups before he recalls, it's going to be really hard to play against him. But if you can make him base before, that's really good. So the only way to do that, well the best way to do that, sorry, is to dive him and kill him while he's in mini form. And if he plays well, if he sits really far back, doesn't trade, farms with Q, he can actually time his Mega for the cannon wave. He can time it so that when Bin crashes wave 3, he can of course have Mega form, but here Bin is just hard trading HP back and forwards, and forcing Doran to burn Mega. And a side note, you notice 2 games in a row Bin warded down here, which is a good ward to note. I don't see a lot of people do that in solo queue, because if you ward the try, you can't see if the jungler jumps here, and if you ward the river, it's the same thing, you can't see them in try. So here is the best of both worlds, where you can see them the second they leave try, and also if they enter river. So I really like this one, we'll call it the Bin ward, where now he's just burned Gnar's Mega. So he's calling up his Jarvan, Jarvan killed 3 camps and ran straight topside to find the Vi. And now that he's found the Vi, he is essentially trying to create a situation where they're either going to be 2v2ing, keeping Vi under the tower, or if Vi makes a mistake, like he does here, right, he's zoning Vi away. Now he can look to punish this Gnar, where Vi had to sit under this tower farming with Gnar, which is of course horrible, right? That sucks for the game state. Your jungler is just top farming to keep your top laner alive, basically a second support. But that's the power of Rumble. That's what Rumble can utilize. And if they make a mistake, like this Vi does here, he's just sitting back respecting. He's not willing to risk his own life to get stuck in. And now it's very easy for them to collapse onto this Gnar. Right now, Gnar's just going to die, get cooked away, and just so much damage from the strong champion Rumble, right? But the main point is, Bin just understands his champion's identity so well. You can see it 2 games in a row on the same champion. He wards accordingly, wards early, of course his champ's vulnerable. He doesn't 2-wave crash, he doesn't do anything wrong with his wave, but he's trading the whole time. And versus Aatrox, he was trying to get him low, and versus Gnar, the same thing, with also the side benefit of trying to force him to burn Mega, so that they could dive on wave 3. Versus Aatrox, right, they dived a lot later than Gnar, because Gnar is very, very squishy early on, especially if you can waste his Mega. Now, for our next matchup, Aatrox vs Jax, Bin showcases a really good way to use your TP to gain an advantage in a losing matchup, where Jax beats Aatrox early, if you guys don't know, and Aatrox can look to trade around level 4, level 5, but before that point, it's going to be very hard for him to play. Where here, he walks up early. Now, something you'll notice is even though he loses level 1, he's not sitting far back. Now, this is what he does extremely well. Where he made Jax E onto him and fight him level 1, where of course you might be thinking, why is that good if he loses the trade, but now he's made Jax's E hit all of the minions, right? He's made him do too much damage to the minions, so now his wave is going to be crashing outside of Bin's tower. He's going to be crashing wave 2, which if you'll notice in the Jax vs Gragas game, even though their matchup is harder, that is something he didn't do, right? He didn't push too fast, he didn't crash wave 2, but now that Doran has done so, it's very easy for Bin to freeze the wave outside of his tower. Where you'll see it coming up, where now he can stand just outside tower range, thin the wave a little bit, clear the melee minions, but if you'll notice, all of his custom minions are going to bunch up under the tower. So now it's very hard for Doran to farm these, he can't even touch them, and it's very hard for him to trade onto Bin without taking a tower shot. Well, even though he just did it well just now, right? He's a world-class player, to be fair, give him some credit. He's quite good, he knows the tower range exactly, but a lot of people UVerse will make the mistake. If they try to trade onto you, they're going to take tower shots. And if they don't trade onto you, well, you're just winning a losing matchup, right? You're farming for free in a bad matchup. And as you'll see now, right, Doran is really good. He's just outside the tower range. Just barely not taking the tower shot. But Bin is still happy. Bin is still farming essentially for free. That trade wasn't the greatest, but he's getting to his level spikes unscathed, right? If Doran crashed to wave 3 and let the wave come back towards him, he could set up a gank against him. He could look to trade onto him when the wave's outside of Doran's tower. But now it's just very easy for Bin to sit here, wave 3, wave 4, just let it bunch up. And now Doran can force the push, right? Later on, around 3:30, then he can crash the wave under his tower. But by that time, Bin is going to be getting level 4. He's going to get 4 on this wave. And now he's able to trade back onto the Jax. Right, he didn't force any sort of meaningful trade or meaningful wave state to punish the Aatrox before he gets to his point where he's strong. I'm not saying he's going to win the matchup level 4 vs 4, that's just when you can look to trade, right? You normally win this matchup level 7 onwards, but around level 4, as you can see, you can start to fight back a bit. You're not a total pushover like you are 1 to 3. And it's all because of the way he played level 1, where he forced Doran to crash wave 2 too early, because he knew if he didn't, he'd be able to bunch waves, dive him, let it come back towards him, whatever he wanted to do. He removed for him that option and let the wave freeze outside his tower so he could farm it for free. Where now, something you'll notice, Doran used E and also it's a cannon wave. Now Ben could have stayed if it was a 6 creep wave, but because it's a cannon wave, he chooses the base and TP, because especially he baited out the Jax's E, he knows Jax cannot crash this wave in time before he bases and TPs back. So now he's going to TP back and freeze the wave outside of his tower. Where if it was a 6 creep wave, of course Jax would have been easily been able to clear that wave and get under tower before Ben could base and TP back. But now that he's done it on a cannon wave, the wave is just outside his tower and he's able to freeze it, and even though he doesn't freeze, the entire wave, he freezes enough of it, so now it's going to slow push quite nicely. Where Doran feels pressure to stay, but of course now Ben can look to trade, right? The wave's outside, underneath his tower. It's very easy for him to look to get trades, especially level 5 Aatrox. You'll notice he didn't use his Q at level 4. He's waiting until level 5, and now he can look to trade and punish Doran accordingly. And Doran is going to have to base and TP back, where it's pretty important to make sure you keep your TP on Jax in this matchup, first TP, unless you're gaining an advantage with it, of course. But if you use the TP early, then you're not going to have TP later on when Aatrox starts to win the matchup. Where around the time at level 7, level 9, Aatrox can win the matchup, and you won't win until Sundra. But if you have your TP, it's very easy to utilize that to delay, to get base TP back, get high HP, get more items to stall that time until your Sundra. Where now Jax has to base and TP back early, so now he's not going to have it later on down the road. And now Ben is just building a big wave, which of course we know he's going to get a level up before him, he's going to be able to trade, and he's just winning this losing matchup purely from the way he uses TP and the way he played his level 1 and 2, forcing Doran to push too quickly. But now it's very easy, level 6 huge minion wave, he's just going to win all of these trades, pretty straightforward. And also he made Jax use TP as well, another benefit, because Jax, even after this bad trade, he can't look to TP back, without losing a ton of minions. And now the lane is essentially over, and Doran is forced to call his jungler up, which is what he does. But the main point of this game I wanted to show you is the way you can bait your opponent to push the wave too quickly and ruin their wave state and punish it by freezing the way Ben did, and also the way you can use your TP to freeze the wave and also punish them even further. And for our final matchup, we have Renekton vs Olaf, and this has been my favourite lane to review at Worlds so far, because Ben really showcases his mastery on Renekton, and just his mastery in top lane in general. Where in this matchup, in case you didn't know, it is an Olaf-sided skill matchup, where if you're playing Renekton in solo queue, you should look to run Ignite and maybe even build Blade of the Ruined King in this matchup. Because you really need to have a ton of damage, because Olaf is always going to win that all-in extended fight. Unless you have Ignite, right? So Ignite is really good in this matchup, but of course Ben is playing in competitive, so he takes TP. But he still wins the matchup and gets a massive lead regardless, even with no jungle help. Where here, Broken Blade, he does something good. I'll speed it up because the early lane's quite uninteractive. It's just Renekton respecting. And now Broken Blade, he essentially proxies wave 4. And then bases, which is a good way to play, especially if you don't have TP, because you don't want to be stuck in the lane. And now, after he bases, he's cleared the wave up here, right? Which means he has more tempo, he's going to get back to lane faster. And the way you normally counteract that, if you're a TP champion, is you either one-shot this wave in base, or you one-shot this wave and the next wave in base, right? I see a lot of people stay in lane, and they one-shot this wave in base if they can, especially on Renekton. Or if you're playing a champion like Camille, for example, you would have to base in TP, your wave clear is too terrible. But on Renekton, almost everyone would clear this wave. But the reason Ben bases and TP's back, even though he doesn't have to TP, right? Or even though he could clear the wave, is because he wants to be stacking his Fury before Olaf arrives. Which I think is just such a cool trick on Renekton. I didn't really think about it actively before I watched this VOD. Because now before Olaf gets to the wave, and also he's stacking Fury, but he's not pushing it too fast, right? He doesn't want to end up here, of course. But he's stacking his Fury on this wave, so that before Broken Blade can trade onto him, he already has 35 Fury, which means he can get an empowered stun in any type of trade. So I thought that was just such a cool example of mastery on Renekton, and as you can see how good the trade can be with an empowered W, or if you don't have empowered W, it's very easy for Olaf to chase you down. And Broken Blade's trying to punish the, the W cooldown of Renekton, but the damage is done. He's spaced him far enough away by utilizing the empowered stun, utilizing the Fury, that not only does he have the extra damage, but he's also able to create distance. Now, as soon as he notices Broken Blade do that, right, try to retrade onto him here at 410, he notices, alright, Broken Blade ruined the wave. As soon as he hit me, all of my minions turned onto him. So now the wave is coming back towards me. So in Ben's mind, the lane is completely over. So now he's just going to be looking to stand between the minion wave, get as high Fury as he can, and look to punish Broken Blade if he walks up. And the reason he's not thinning the wave that much, of course he is slightly, is because Renekton doesn't really need to. Renekton is just so good at just curing the wave if you need to, if Broken Blade's trying to push it in, so he doesn't really need to thin it that much, right? There are a ton of minions here, but if you're playing a champion weaker than Renekton, you would need to be thinning this out. As you saw when he was playing Jax, right, he was thinning it. Even though Jax isn't a weak champion by any means, it's not as strong as Renekton early game. And now that Ben has such a nice freeze here, it's really hard for Broken Blade to even walk up in CS without throwing Qs. And I'll bring up the CS numbers. where now, of course, it's not the biggest lead in the world, right? 32 to 30, but Ben still has a lot of minions to last it, and the lead is only going to grow further because Broken Blade is just so scared to walk up right now. And another thing is he has a Nocturne jungle, where Nocturne's not really going to be very helpful until level 6, and even at 6, you're not really going to kill a Renekton, which is another reason why Ben is rushing Ninja Tabbies here. If you'll notice, he's got Boots and Cloth, because with Ninja Tabs versus Olaf, very easy to space, dodge his Qs, and also Olaf Nocturne, right? So much AD damage. So Ninja Tab is really good rush this game. And now he's just going to be holding his freeze. Now, he doesn't need a recall here by any means, because he's only around 600, 700 gold, right? He's just going to get Ninja Tabby and come back. Where even though that is good against their top jungle, this freeze is way more valuable than any type of item advantage he's going to get. Now this whole time, Broken Blade's just losing XP, he's losing minions, losing gold, and now it's going to be really hard for him to catch up. Where now, especially Ben's level 6 timer versus level 5, he's just created such a big XP difference, where it's really hard for Broken Blade to use his champion, right? All-in threat of Olaf, it's really hard to use when you're down a whole level. But now he's abusing the fact, level 6 to 5, there's no way Broken Blade can really retrade onto him, and I'm pretty sure he tries it and just gets ulted. Yep, see, the level 6 timer versus level 5, it's really hard for Olaf to do anything. He has to accept reality, right? Accept that he's not going to win the trade. But he doesn't, and he takes a further trade. But luckily, he has fruit in this game, but he's still getting destroyed, right? Even with fruit, it doesn't really matter. He's going to be coming back, and now Ben is going to keep holding his freeze. Now, the timer where Ben breaks his freeze is really important, and I'll speed it up a bit to get to there. Where now this whole time, he's still freezing, right? Level 7 to 5, as you'll notice. Very hard for Broken Blade to do anything in this lane. And now the timer that he breaks freeze is around 730 to 740, where the reason he breaks this is because Rift Herald is spawning soon, right? Rift Herald spawns at 8 minutes, and Ben wants to be a part of that if his team wants to fight it. Maokai, Jace, Renekton, very strong topside, of course, so he wants to give his team the option, where he doesn't want to be freezing anymore, so here he just pushes the wave, and he wants to get his base off or fight this Herald. As soon as Olaf dips out to Herald as well, by the way, as you'll notice, he's just fogging down the Herald to give his team that option. You can see they're playing for it. Rakan and Maokai, they're all grouped up around it, but Nocturne did it on spawn. He did it too quickly, so they're unable to, but that's the reason he broke his freeze. He didn't want to be in a situation where he's holding a freeze, just getting some CS and XP over Olaf, but Olaf brute forces the Herald with his team, fights his teammates, so Ben wanted to be a part of that. That's why he pushes wave, and he's been in lane a long time anyway. He's done, the damage is done, right? He's up 40 CS, 1.5 levels. He's gained his advantage, so it's time for him to recall anyway. But the main reason he broke the freeze was, of course, to be a part of that Herald, but also he wants to be basing anyway to spend the gold as well, so it's a double whammy, right? It's the best of both worlds, and the main reason he gained an advantage against his Olaf, I guess there's multiple, but he really understood his champion. He TP'd back to lane with the minion wave in the center instead of pushing it and then doing so that he could stack his Fury before Olaf even returned. He utilized the TP advantage to stack his Fury before he got to the point where they were fighting, level 4 versus level 4, full HP, but at that point Ben was high Fury, so he was able to win trades against the Olaf before Olaf was 6. And then when Olaf was low HP, he made a single mistake, right? He traded too aggressively on Ben, and all of Ben's minions turned onto him, so it's really easy for Ben to realize, okay, the wave is coming back towards me now, Olaf made that mistake, I'm going to be looking to punish him. He froze the wave basically forever, and if Olaf ever walked up, he would be traded onto, and eventually he'd be killed, because, level advantage Renekton with high Fury, very hard to walk up to if you're low HP. And he basically won the lane from that, right? He won the lane from his TP usage, understanding of his champion, the fact that he needs to be stacking Fury before Olaf got there, and also his insane wave control. Alright everyone, I'm going to wrap up there, and let's all hope Ben wins the semi-finals and makes it to the World Finals yet again, because we all know what happened last time. This guy is just so fun to watch, and I strongly recommend you watch any of his VODs you can find. There's some pro views, some LPL games, some solo queue games, anything you can find on YouTube I recommend watching, because this guy is just such a good player, and you can only improve your gameplay from watching him.